The following presentation is a production of Ride the Wave Media.
Hello, welcome to Practically Magick. Today I am your local witch and healer and mystic. I'm here today because the day I'm recording this is actually October 1st. It's going to come out a few weeks later than that, but we're getting closer and closer to Samhain or Halloween, All Hallows Eve. And people love to get witchy during this time of year. We love the feeling of fall. We love that the veil starts to feel thin. So today we're going to talk about some dark and spooky topics, which are actually going to be very helpful for anyone and everyone in their lives. So let's start our episode pulling a card. Okay. All right. I pulled this card earlier, and I don't know why, but I felt like I just needed to put it back and try again, and pulled it just now, and it's the exact same card. That is usually how it works with divination. Oh, I apologize if I sound like I'm a little stuffy. The fall time comes with the beautiful fall colors, but it also comes with a lot of dust and pollen, and unfortunately, it interacts with my body as if I have a very bad cold. So I am working through it. And it feels like every time I start to record something or put myself on camera for any reason, all of a sudden I have eyes watering and sniffly nose. And I made sure I was all ready to go before I got on camera and before I hit record, and now I'm sitting here just crying tears. Yeah, I'm just gonna go with it. It's just what it is. It's what's happening. I'm gonna be a little puffy, a little wet, a little snotty. It'll be fine. Okay. It's not my favorite. This is the card that came up. I'm using my elemental oracle deck today, one of my first oracle decks, and it's very scientific. And the one that keeps coming up is the magic card. And the word that comes up with it is alchemy. It's so interesting because I was actually going to do an episode on alchemy, but I felt like I just didn't know enough about it yet to talk about it on a podcast episode. But there is a lot about alchemy that's very fascinating to me. And the way that I engage with alchemy, or the way that I understand it in the world of healing and what I do with clients and energy, is that we are turning what we have been given, what resources we have available to us in our own mind, in our own energy, in our own body, to be able to spin that into gold and to be able to transform that into something that is very powerful and useful and valuable. And I feel like what we're about to do today is going to take some things that people have deep-rooted fears about and turn it into something that makes them feel powerful and magical. So we're talking about today spaces and cleansing spaces. Basically, the topic is haunted houses. I love a good story. You know I do. I love to tell a good story, and I especially love the haunted houses, stories and ghost stories. I think they're fun and entertaining, but even still, as a child, I think I was terrified of my house being haunted, or actually seeing a ghost, or having interaction with something that would be a ghost. One of my favorite TV shows when I was a kid was X-Files. And although there is a main plot in X-Files that had to do with aliens and alien conspiracies, actually my favorite plot lines were the kind of obscure off the beaten path episodes where they would do something about the paranormal or about ghost stories. Um, they were the most spooky to me. And honestly, for a long time, when I was a kid, a teenager, probably late into my early adulthood, I was a little bit terrified of mirrors in the bathroom. And when you would get out of the shower and the shower steam would make the room and the mirrors steamy, there was something. I must have seen it on Unsolved Mysteries or something when I was a kid, but there was sort of those ideas of paranormal experiences that people would have, and these paranormal experts would talk about how that ghosts had to, or spirits or entities had to be able to interact with energies going on around them in order to manifest or make themselves seen. And I thought the steam from the shower was going to make somebody appear or something appear. Or if I looked in the mirror, there would be that image. We've seen it on horror movies where it's you look in the mirror and there's a person standing behind you in the reflection. You turn around and there's no one there. Those kinds of things. And I did have some experiences, especially because when I was a teenager, we moved into our my dad's childhood home, which was his father's childhood home. This home, the old Reeder homestead, we called it, was built in 1880 something, 1883, I think. So even when we moved into it, it was over 100 years old. And it was a great old, it used to be a farmhouse, kind of Victorian style. Not as maybe lavish as Victorian homes that you see in haunted house type things, but um it was a little bit more like a farmhouse. It had, a front parlor and a family room that were both in the front of the house, and a porch. It had an upstairs that was once one big room that had been kind of makeshift into several bedrooms upstairs. When my family moved in, we added a bathroom upstairs because the only bathroom in the house was one that was built on the back of the house, where the kitchen was. So it was the only bathroom and it was right off the kitchen. So one of those houses that was probably built in phases because, families changed and needed different things. And it probably started out with an outhouse, I'm just assuming. But my great grandmother raised her children there. She had my grandfather in that house. And before he was born, her husband died tragically. And so she had to raise those kids by herself and manage the orchard. And part of the orchard was sold off. And so this house had a lot of history, a lot of families. And I just happened to be a descendant of the family that lived there. So when my grandfather passed away, I was in high school and I had been living in this house for a while. And my grandfather had taught us how to do the irrigation and how to kind of take care of the tractor and things like that. I think he was very much attached to this house because he grew up there and he loved it and he took care of it and he put a lot of love and hard work into it, and raised his family there. And so me and my sister being the new generation of family that was living in this house, there were some incidences that just unexplained things would happen. My grandfather's favorite singer was Johnny Cash. And when he passed, we had our radio, our CD player, entertainment center, whatever, we called it, that would all of a sudden start playing Johnny Cash out of nowhere, when no one had touched it, and the dial would turn up loud. So the volume would turn up and our family would be like, "What, who's playing music really loud? Can someone turn that down?" And when we realized that nobody was actually playing it, that it was just playing, we would realize that must be Grandpa. He's playing Johnny Cash. He's letting us know that he's here and that was his favorite singer. So I remember one time I did get out of the shower in the new bathroom we'd built upstairs, and we had dark linoleum that we'd put in that bathroom. It was a dark green, and kind of trying to renovate the house and make it updated a little bit, put in actual light switches because the house had those pull string lights upstairs when we first moved in. Like I said, very old house. And I remember when I got out of the shower, you step on the dark linoleum, your feet would create a footprint on the, from the steam on the ground. And one time I looked down and I could see where I was standing, where my feet were, but next to my feet was a footprint that was not mine. It was not my size foot, and it was right nearby me where I had not stepped yet when I was stepping out of the shower. So there was just a moment where I was like, wait, whose footprint is that? And I was pretty terrified because I didn't know what to do. But haunted houses are some of our favorite stories. We love the idea that a space, that people can live on after they die, or that we can interact with it. There's a lot of ghost hunter shows out there that try to contact or to get evidence and proof, recording and video of what a ghost is. There was even a court case I was learning about, the Stembovsky versus Ackley case. A man named Jeffrey Stembovsky was buying a home in the 90s, and he didn't realize upon signing his contract to purchase the home that it was notoriously haunted. Nobody wanted this house. It had been on the market for a long time, and the neighbors and the community in the area knew that this house was, there was a lot of stories about noises and footsteps and things crashing around, and people were well aware that this house was possibly haunted. He was not aware when he purchased the home, so he went ahead and went under contract. But when he realized the rumors, he tried to back out of the contract, and there was this pretty famous court case. They called it the Ghostbusters ruling, because in the ruling of the case, the judge had actually said, we need to make it, part of the law to disclose any haunting rumors. You need to let a buyer of a home know if a house is rumored to be haunted, or they can decide to back out of the sale. So that being an actual ruling of somebody who, it sort of legitimizes the idea of a haunted house, that a house or a space can be affected by energy or have an entity that does not feel safe for some people. I know I am a big fan of watching the Dead Files show, because again, it's sort of an interesting dynamic to be able to legitimize the things that mediums are experiencing when they go into a house or when they go into a space, and they can feel entities, they can feel certain people, certain perhaps people who've passed on, or people who have never inhabited a body but are surrounded by a sort of heaviness. And so that show is interesting because it has a very logical minded private detective, retired from the police force. He's really good at investigations, and he investigates the property separately from the medium who investigates the property from a mystical point of view. So she goes into the home and she talks about what she sees, what she feels. She even goes to a police sketch artist and has them sketch any images that she receives in her channeling, in her being able to, what she's experienced in the home. And then separately, the private investigator will investigate the history of the home, any events that happened there, anyone who's lived there, died there, anything he finds out, and he brings it to the end of the episode. The owners or the people who live in the home, whatever they're experiencing, it's usually not good. It's usually like they are terrified. They are having experiences that they don't want to continue, or they don't want to affect them. And this is an effort to find out more, find out why. And so it's interesting when they get to sit across the table from this medium and this private investigator, and both of them reveal what they found. My mom and I love this show because it is really, really fascinating to see how many times, how often she is really accurate in what she discovers. She discovers sometimes people who actually lived or have a connection to the property. And the history that the PI has dug up will corroborate that. Like it's very validating with that. But what I've noticed at the end of these episodes is that when it comes time for people to say, well, what do we do if there is an entity or if there is a certain spirit that seems to be wanting to harm us or wants to bother us or doesn't like us living there? What are we going to do about it? She will often give kind of a formula for what you could potentially do to help the situation. And she talks about cleansing the space or cleansing the home. She talks about finding a spiritual leader, or oftentimes she will mention a Reiki master. She says, find yourself a Reiki master and have them come and cleanse your house. And I kind of love this because I am a Reiki master. I do understand that. I do understand what she's saying and why a Reiki master would be the perfect profession or person who could come and help cleanse a space. But what I'm hoping to be able to bring forward today when we talk about haunted houses and types of haunting and cleansing spaces is I'm hoping to be able to help people feel empowered in that whatever they've got experience that they're experiencing with their space, that they are not helpless with it. I'm going to share another story. So I have a friend who is a real estate agent, and she just happens to be very connected to the world of energy and mystic type things, woo-woo, if you will. She's really great at selling houses, and she is extremely personable when she works with clients. So she's the kind of person who's like, oh, during the sale of your house, your water heater happened to go out or leak or something, I will pay to have it repaired. I will help you. She's very much about making sure that the buying and the selling process of homes is very rewarding, and it isn't as stressful as it needs to be. And she's very good at putting people first. So she had a property that she was trying to sell. The owners had a teenage boy, and for whatever reason, the teenage boy just seemed to be kind of in a dark place. He was getting into a lot of trouble. He was alienating himself. There was a lot of tension in the home, things like that. But they had asked her to sell their home, and she was having a lot of difficulty even getting people to come and see the home. Doing showings, and she's very good at her job. So I know it wasn't that. And I had seen the home myself. So I knew this was a very desirable location. It was a large home, lots of bedrooms, lots of big open spaces. It was light. There really wasn't any logical, physical reasons why this home was having trouble being sold or being seen. So she invited a Reiki master to come and cleanse the home. She gave no information whatsoever to this person. She just knew that they are good at cleansing energy and cleansing spaces and healing, the healing work that Reiki does. Reiki is just an energy of love and light that helps when infused into a space or into a body. It can help cleanse and balance those spaces. So she had the Reiki master come and drum, and which we'll talk about in just a minute. But in drumming the spaces and going through the space, she also was doing smoke cleansing and things like that. She did go into one of the bedrooms that the home was empty. They had already moved out. So she went into one of the rooms, and she was like, there was a teenage boy in this home. And this teenage boy was very disturbed. It's possible that he was harming animals. And that was interesting because in our neighborhood at the time, there were some reports of some people's pets being harmed, like at night. And it looked like that the windows in this boy's room were tampered with, like he had broken the seals or something like that, had been sneaking out of his room at night. So whatever was going on, whatever this young man was involved in and how he was doing life, it was what you might call dark. I don't know if I prefer the term dark. I think that kind of has a negative connotation, but it was very heavy. It was a very heavy space. She did some work to cleanse that energy out and to remove it from the space of the home. And after she did her cleansing, the home was under contract very soon after. So I'm always relaying this kind of story to real estate agents when I'm networking with my business Prism Healing. I'm talking to real estate agents and I'm like, you might think that the work that I do is not valuable to you, or that it's just woo woo, or you don't necessarily understand how it works, but I can assure you that the effort put into and the intention putting into cleansing a space of any energies, whether they're heavy or not, but cleansing the previous owner's energies out of the home and allowing the vacuum or space to be emptied out so that they can attract new owners to the home, can be really, really helpful. And if you're not looking to sell your home, if you are just a person who is like, listen, I just want to make sure that my home is optimal, or that if there is entities in my home, that I can have a home that's cleansed and uplifted and raise the vibrational energy of the home itself, that the family that's in it is protected. And so I'm going to talk about a couple of ways to do that. So there are a couple of types of hauntings, if you will. I'm going to just go over a few that I know of. I'm sure that there are experts on hauntings and spirits that can dive into this much more than I can, but I'm going to talk about what I know. There are spirits, for example, spirit being, or souls being that they had inhabited a body, they have passed on. And by the way, typically, if they are staying in a space, it is because they have not yet moved on to the next realm, moved into the light, if you will. So they're hanging around. So these are the types of entities where it's like they don't know that they're dead, or that they have unresolved issues, or they have something that that keeps them connected to what they believe to be their physical body or their ego. This is a painful state for them to be in. It's not helpful to not go on. And most of the time when spirits or souls of somebody we know and love who've passed on, they no longer remain in the physical state of what they looked like, what they were wearing, what their body, what their struggles were. I have heard it said that when a spirit moves on, so let's say you have grandma or grandpa and they've passed away and they've decided to move on, they're able to move through the light and move on. When they're in their white light selves, you probably wouldn't even recognize them because they have shed all of their earthly ego. They are no longer in a state where they care as much about what's going on earth. They are ascended beings, if you will. And there's many levels of that. But I think there are certain souls that can remain attached to the earth and to their lives here. Now, there are something called shadow people, and I don't think that these types of entities have held a body at any point in time. I'm not exactly sure what they're connected with, and I'm not sure they're all exactly harmful. This is, and many people will understand this if I say this, this is the type of thing where you're not quite looking. Your eyes are not focused on something. Your eyes are focused on something else. And in the corner of your eye, it's as if somebody walks past the doorway or somebody walks through. You could just see movement in the corner of your eye, and it's just a shadow. There is a really, really great way to make sure that your space is safe and protected from the shadow people, whether they intend harm or not. That just there are, I purchased some from a market one time. A certain, there's these pyramids infused with crystals. They have a bunch of crystals in them. And they sometimes have like sacred geometry or symbols. It really doesn't matter what the object is, but these ones all that I bought have selenite in them, which is a cleansing crystal we talked about in our crystals episode. I purchased 4 of these that were intentionally infused with protection from a shaman or from a person who does this kind of work, cleansing work. They basically put a spell on it. You can call it whatever you want. They blessed it. These 4 are placed in the corners of a space, and it is protecting the space from these sort of entities, these shadow people. Why or where they come from, I'm not sure, but they're there. And there are a lot of people who will agree with me, who can attest that they have felt or seen these shadow people around, trying to get into the home, trying to influence you in some way, trying to kind of infiltrate the energy of the home. There are entities, and entities don't necessarily have to be spirits of dead people, people who've passed on, but entities can be from the people who are living. And these are like energies. So it's kind of like spirits, shadow people, entities, and energies. Now, if someone in the home happens to be going through a really hard time, is suffering from depression and anxiety and self-loathing and not participating in self-care, there can be what sort of grows from that. It's sort of like as if that person were creating a dark cloud over them, and that dark cloud just hangs over the person. And it can actually just stay in the space. It can stay in the home. This is why a lot of spaces are affected by teenagers. When teenagers are going through kind of that transition, they can attract a lot of energy that can feel tumultuous. It can feel like chaos, just because that's sort of the time of life that they're in already. You know, being a teenager is not easy. There's a lot going on for them. So when someone is going through something like that, they can actually create this dark energy, or they can have it manifest as if it is an actual entity or a personage that doesn't exist, or that wasn't a person in real life, but they are. But then that entity or that poltergeist can act out in physical ways. So there can be, you know, books flying off of shelves, things dropping. You can hear noises, you can hear whispers, you can hear. There's lots of different ways that that can manifest. And for people who are empathic or really connected in that way, can feel it and sense it. So people who are going to visit your home, for example, can walk in and they can sense that something is just not quite right, that something is heavy or off in the home. But here is what I would like to offer you today, is that there are a lot of ways to cleanse and to protect and to empower the living and the spaces of your home. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. So I have a couple of spells that I've collected. I've got some, I don't know, they're just pre-written spells someone made. There's the Sacred Land and Spirit Tree spell, Purification Ritual. This one is engaging with the deity of Isis, who is a healing goddess of the Egyptian mythology. And it says to use salts from the sea. Salt is very cleansing as well. So I've seen a lot of spells where they'll put blocks of salt or salt mixed with water, and that is placed all around the perimeter of your home. So all the way around your yard, or inside the home, all the way around every room of the home. So salt, sea salt, being a part of it. This one says, Isis, in your wisdom, help me reflect your image. My body is a temple to the goddess. Here I worship today with head, hands, and heart and soul. Temple of Love spell. This room is my temple, my altar to love. I light the flame. So this would involve a candle. I light the flame. I fan the flame. Each candle I burn is a wish. I desire and will be desired in return, and so it is. That's giving some invitation for love to inhabit the space and to allow that the people in the space would love each other. Home. This is a housewarming spell for a new home. By the way, if you've just moved into a home, I highly recommend doing a ritual to cleanse the home of any previous energies and to make sure that your energy is invited into the home. So kind of making the space your own is really important. Home of my body, I accept your shelter. Home of my heart, I receive your blessings. Home of my heart, I am open to joy, and so it is, and so it shall be. So whatever way that you decide to create a ritual, there are certain herbs that can be helpful. If you've ever watched the movie Practical Magic, which we are reviewing on the Witch Movie Project, so make sure that you hop over there and watch that episode when that one comes out. But we talk about the ending of that movie saying, plant rosemary by your garden gate. Rosemary can be very effective for protection, for cleansing. But I have this book, The Holistic Witch, which talks about some ways to plant certain things into your garden, which are great for home protection, and some indoor plants and herbs that you can involve in the indoor protection and cleansing of your home. So they recommend using cowslip, daisies. Daisies and their happy little faces, of course, are excellent for just sort of, how do I put this? Kind of welcoming the positive energy into the home, or any guests who are coming in, making sure that they are in a good space when they come into your home and that they will be warded. So warding is like casting a spell of protection so that nothing can enter the space that is going to cause harm or is going to leave their heavy residual energy. Honeysuckle, foxglove, raspberry. I have raspberry bushes that just happen to already be there when we moved in, but they are kind of on the perimeter of the border of our yard. I super love raspberry, and raspberry can be a great way to create space. Here's a card that it's raspberry, create space. It's like nesting, right? The image on that card is little birds nesting, making their nest their own. Lavender, jasmine. One way to be able to create, to kind of include these herbs that I'm talking about, when you find the herbs you want to use, and they can be really anything that's meaningful to you. I'm listing some that are in some books and spells, but honestly, if it feels like, this is an herb that my grandmother used to cook with, and when I smell it, I think of her and her warm and nurturing and loving energy, then that is going to be just as powerful in your spells as anything else. But what I'm going to suggest, one way to incorporate these into a spell or a ritual, is to make a simmer pot. So in the hearth fire, or on your stove, or in the center of your home, usually your kitchen, you are going to boil some water on the stove, and you can include any herbs that smell good or that infuse your senses with those positive feelings. So being able to include some orange slices, some lavender in there, some rosemary. It's kind of like you're playing potions. When you were a little kid, if you ever went outside and you got a bowl from your mom's kitchen and you went around and you just started putting things in your bowl to mix up and make a potion, that's how you make a really good simmer pot. So you just go around binding the herbs and the flowers and the essences of things that feel like protection and warding for you. And what we talked about in the first 4 episodes of Practically Magick. If you haven't gone back and listened to those episodes, when you're creating a ritual or a spell, you are wanting to include the will. So that's what's in your heart. That's the feelings you're infusing in this is I am infusing gratitude. I am infusing this with protection. I'm infusing this with good feelings that I want to envelop my entire home and space in with this. You want the words. So as you're putting your herbs and things into your pot, you are saying, this is for love. You know, maybe you put some rose petals in there and you say, this is to invite love into my home. And orange slices, which is, you know, helping me create positive relationships with each other. Maybe some rosemary. And as you put that in, you say, this is to ward off any negative energies that do not serve me and my family. And then you're putting that all in your simmer pot and letting it simmer and letting that steam and good essence just fill your home. Another great way is, again, we mentioned sound healing for witches, for healers, for anyone, absolutely anyone. You can infuse your home or use sound healing. One thing is a witch's bell. So I have here, this is an apple bell for school, but really apples are sacred to Celtic mythology, and the Isle of Apples is Avalon. And so I went ahead and purchased this bell specifically for ritual. I also have a staff with bells on it that I use for this exact purpose as well. But I go around to doors that are going to go outside the front door, the garage door, the back door. And I just make sure that I ring the bell around the perimeter of the door. And as I'm doing this, I'm putting the will. My intention is to ward off anything that does not belong in my home and to create a barrier of protection from anything entering my home that does not serve me. Before I got into any of this mystical stuff, when I did not know a single thing about energy, energetics, or anything, how it works, I remember there was a time when our home was very heavy. We were all going through a lot. My husband was very stressed out at his job and struggling with quite a few different things. And myself being the partner of a person going through all that. Plus I think at the time I had just had my twins, and that was a really hard time. I was trying to take care of a little toddler and twin babies and kind of doing a lot of that on my own. So the house and home just seemed very tense. We were kind of at each other's throats a lot. It did not feel like a loving space. It felt like we were all a little bit hard on each other. And I just remember thinking, we have to do something to change this up. We have to do something. And I told my son, who was 4 at the time, I said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go around the house and take all the nasty away. We're going to take all this nasty out of the house, all the bad feelings, all the yuck, all the, just anything we don't like. We're going to take it all out and we're going to send it out the front door. And I went around the house and we literally just with our hands, we were scooping up bad stuff out of the air, out of the corners, out of the shelves, out of the doorways, anywhere, behind beds. We went all over the house. And I just kept saying to him, like, come on, let's scoop it up, let's scoop it up. And we did that. And he had a blast. He thought this was the funniest fun game ever. We went around and scooped up all the bad stuff and we sent it out the front door. We opened the front door and we literally just pushed it out. And come to find out years later, that this ritual that I created before I even knew how to do a ritual was exactly right. It was exactly what we needed. We all felt a difference. We felt a shift in the world, and it felt like our home was peaceful again. That whatever we had let develop or bring up in this, so that's what you can do with bells. You can send it out. Drumming is an extremely effective way. I have my drum, of course, that I use during healing sessions, Reiki sessions with clients, but drumming is breaking up the energy and sending whatever you would like to move out. Of course, there is smoke cleansing. However, I am going to be very, very specific about this. A lot of people engage with saging when they first decide to start doing ritual cleansing or preparing a space for something ceremony. A lot of people are using white sage. Now, white sage is a indigenous people's practice. The people who lived here in North America, many different tribes of the North American continent used saging practices during their sacred and spiritual ceremonies. And they are not for us to appropriate. So for people who maybe don't understand what sage was used for, what its purpose was, and it's not our culture to be using sage, I would invite you to second guess that and think of another way that you can engage with something that is more appropriate for your culture or for your heritage. I was also told by members of tribes that saging practices were actually used to invite spirits, not cleanse the space of spirits. And so you can imagine how spirits would feel if they were in your home and they were standing around watching you and you're just over there with sage being like, oh, get out, get out, get out of my home. They're probably just standing around there going, what are you doing? What is that? But you can cleanse a space with smoke, and it is possible. The Nordic tradition of using smoke cleansing is called seining, and you can use seining with some items that are indigenous to your own heritage, cultural homeland, right? So I have here, if you're watching on video, this is a bundle that I've made. I went foraging for some plants that are invasive here because it's not indigenous here. Mullein is one that creates those big stalks, and they get really invasive. They're kind of everywhere. A friend of mine, Bergen at Nourishing Kin, taught us how to go and forage for these. And they have really big, fluffy, soft, almost like lamb's ear leaves, which are great for creating bundles. Now, you don't need to light this or smoke this in order to use it. Inside I have pine tree and lavender leaves, lavender sticks, and a couple of other things that I found that are more, indigenous to the places that my family comes from or my cultural heritage comes from. And, in studying seining and what it is and how to use it, it's appropriate to know what you're doing and what you're engaging with before you participate in that ceremonial practice. And that is why maybe, finding somebody who is a Reiki master or someone who is a shaman or a mystic who has done the work is a good idea if you want your space cleansed in that way. Rather than just heading over to your local shop, buying some sage, and then being like, oh, I sage my house. Look at me, I'm so witchy. Okay, so you absolutely don't have to engage in any of that if you don't want to. But one of the reasons why witches are associated with brooms is because a lot of witches, or those even that weren't witches, were just accused of being witches, would use brooms to cleanse their space. I actually have purchased those really great cinnamon infused brooms that you see at the grocery stores around this time of year. I love to buy a new one every year. I have made my own besoms. Broom is actually the grass. It's called broom that they would use to make besoms. And besoms is the word for what we call a broom. So in making a besom, I have gathered, plants and different things, and then, tied them to a large stick. And that is not for cleaning my home of dirt, because probably would actually dirty my home more, losing leaves off of it and stuff. But while I'm making it and wrapping it, I am also infusing it with spells, intention, and asking for what it is that I need this besom to be for. But I will buy those cinnamon infused ones, and I have a space above my front door where I hang it every year. So I take the old one down, I'll burn it in my fire, I'll burn it outside, or I'll do something, a ritual with it, taking that as a intention of all of the energy that this broom has collected throughout the year is now just going to be sent back into the universe and repurposed into positive things and fertilize the world of energy for new energies to take place. So what that broom above the door is for me is it's kind of like a cleansing of anyone who enters the home. So for guests who come into my home, or for any of those energies that someone might have had a rough day, or they're going through a lot, and I don't want that to come into my home and stay. That's what that broom is for. Okay, so I highly recommend that certain spaces that have a lot of people coming in and out and kind of leaving their stuff, therapist's office, beauty salons. I have offered the place where I go get my hair done. The last time I was there, it felt great. It felt like an amazing space. But there have been times when I've gone there and I have felt the heaviness of every person who's come in and out in the last couple of months. It feels like people come and they sit in the chair to get their hair done, and sometimes they just leave their stuff. Either they're talking about their things they're going through or what's difficult, or they are kind of just a lot is weighing on them. They're kind of coming in with all of the energy they're holding in their body, and they might just release it. They might be there to relax and to let a lot of it go. And so they'll dump it without even realizing it. A lot of people do this and they don't even know it. Now, this isn't, the same thing as being haunted by ghosts, but it can create an atmosphere where people start to feel very irritable. They start to feel the energies of things that have been left behind without realizing it. They might even ask themselves, I wonder why I feel this way. I feel, so irritated lately, or I feel, like I'm carrying a lot, or I'm really stressed out and I don't know why. So I have offered, and typically I will just do this for anyone who asks me, but it's basically the same thing as a Reiki session. If someone is coming to me to have their body cleansed and to have, to let a lot go, I know how to keep myself safe from those energies, and I know how to keep my Reiki room safe from those energies. So I cleanse the spaces quite often. Again, I have these crystals and these different rituals that I participate in to make sure that whatever people let go of during a Reiki session, that doesn't stay on me or in my space. So that is a really great point to remember, is that if you have a space that is your business space, or it is just a space where a lot of people are coming in and out, and you want to make sure that your space remains clean of anything that the people are leaving behind, you can cleanse that space as well. And there's a lot of different ways to do this. So we've talked about some of them today. What I hope that you will understand about this discussion today about cleansing spaces and haunted houses is that no matter what's going on in your home, whether you feel that it's haunted, that there are spirits or ghosts that are haunting your space, or you just feel like there's a real heaviness going on, you can't quite pinpoint what it is, or you feel like you're waking up in the middle of the night a lot and you feel like it's not coming from you, but there is just something that keeps waking you up and bothering you, there are a lot of really, really healthy practices that can keep you safe from any entities or any energies or spirits that might be affecting you. And that those of us with the living energy, the force that's inside of us that creates our aura, that makes us alive, that is a really powerful, powerful energy. And that most of the time, it's more powerful than whatever energy is that's trying to bother you or inhabit your space. So even just creating a ritual or an intention, something that banishes, wards, and protects you is really effective. Even when I started to become aware of the times when I've been woken up in the middle of the night and I feel like there is someone who's actually trying to bother me or get my attention, it's usually not harmful. I've never had anything that was really actively trying to harm me, scare me maybe. I've had a couple of instances where the images that are coming into my view during those moments have been pretty scary. But as soon as I started to realize that I had the power to ward that, to banish it, or to excuse it from my space, and that when I did that, it actually did leave. That's when I knew that if we all know this about ourselves, if we are able to understand our own power, we never need to be afraid. There never needs to be a reason for us to be scared of our home being haunted, because when we speak and step into a space of empowerment, we can do the work of banishing or excusing or warding and protecting that space and saying, you can go. And one more thing to remember is that if there is an entity that was a spirit who is probably alive at some point and is now kind of hanging around, it's not usually the space that they're hanging around, it's you. They're trying to feed off of your life energy. They're trying to, and in most cases, and this is something that I didn't realize at first, but now I do. In most cases, when someone has an entity influencing them, they might start to feel like they just feel off. They don't feel like themselves. They don't feel like when they look in the mirror, they don't recognize themselves. We can pick up these energies anytime, anywhere, any place. And then they are just sort of following us. They're just sort of part of us. And when that happens, it's not usually the entity or the spirit that wants to harm us. It's usually because they think they can help us. And I'll give you an example. I know somebody who was really, really struggling with addiction, and they were just really going through a very difficult time. Their children were having to go live with their mother because they were just struggling a lot and trying to figure out life. And this person found out through, again, a Reiki master, that they had an entity, a spirit of a large, burly type of man who also struggled with addiction in his lifetime when he was alive. And he attached himself to her because he saw those similarities. He saw or resonated or vibrated with her in that sort of addiction space. And instead of moving towards the light and moving on like he, as a spirit, should be able to do, he felt like he needed to be around her because she was struggling with addiction. And he thought he could help. What was actually happening was that his own energy of struggling with addiction was just hanging around her, attaching to her, and it wasn't helping her. It was causing her to stay in that state of mind, in that state of energy, in that vibration, right? So when she went to a Reiki master to cleanse and to let go and to send that person through the light, to move on, she began to start to heal, to figure herself out, and to move into a space that was energetically ready for recovery from addiction. That's an example of how that can sometimes happen. So if you ever feel like, oh, I don't know what's going on, but I do feel like something's just not right, or I feel just kind of like I'm being affected by energies that are not necessarily my own, I would highly recommend a Reiki session to help cleanse that. There are Reiki masters wherever you are, I promise. Wherever you're listening, you will be able to find somebody who can help you. And I absolutely believe that if you set it out, the intention of looking for someone who is just the right person for you, you will find the person capable of helping you. If you live locally here in Daybreak, you can come to my practice locally. However, here is the best part about Reiki. One of my favorite things about Reiki, it can be done at a distance. It can be done over technology. I have done Reiki sessions with people, and I have even done home cleansings with people who do not live near me, who live across the country. And there are ways to do this. So I highly recommend you can get a hold of me, find me on my website, message me, whatever you need to do to get in touch with me. And if you are having issues with your home, your space, or yourself, your own body and space, I highly recommend entertaining the idea of a Reiki session. So, how to find me? Well, I am on Instagram at prism_healing, PRISM_healing. I am at my website is at prism-healing.com. I will have a blog post with some resources from this episode on my website, so you can go find me there. You can also see all of the services that I provide, which is card readings, or you won't see cleansing, home cleansing on my list of services. However, that would be under Reiki sessions. So if you want to find my Reiki sessions available on my website, look under my services and you can see all of the things that I offer. You can also find me on Facebook, Courtney Pearl's Prism Healing. And yeah, I'm also on TikTok. TikTok, Prism Healing, all one word. And I hope to be able to break apart some of the things we talked about in this episode into little mini videos, and I can post those on TikTok and my Instagram as well. So that can be helpful for people who are looking for just a few things that will help you if you feel like your space needs cleansing, if you need a home exorcism, for example. I would like to thank Ride the Wave Media and my producer, Jess Blaine, for producing this podcast and getting this information out to the world. I hope it is helpful and useful for you. I would also like to thank Sarah Albert, who is head of the Sunshine community, and my friends at the Daybreak Business community, who have been a really big support and help in getting me access to people who need my services. And I hope that that has been helpful for you listening to this episode today. Yeah, so please go make magic. Find your magic today and figure out a way to engage with this magic in your space and in your home. Go make magic, witches and wizards. We'll see you next time.